pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So states the Pledge of Allegiance as spoken nationwide in schools and courthouses, at speeches and events. This 31-word oath represents to many the depth and grandeur of this United States of America, yet to others it speaks of oppression, division, and blatant disregard of the First Amendment. Conflict and compromise has followed the pledge from its inception in 1892 up until the present day. Yet as America has changed, so has the pledge. As new factors have entered the spectrum of American life, so have they been mirrored in the pledge's words and its interpretation. Despite the court cases, the conflicts and the compromises, the intolerance and the controversy which has been engendered in its name, the Pledge of Allegiance remains, as it has for well over a century, a firmly intertwined thread in the fabric of our American culture. 30 years after the Civil War, many factions were lamenting the decline in American patriotism from the fervor seen in the 1860s. One such organization was the Grand Army of the Republic, consisting of veterans of the Union Army. The GAR had a goal of placing an American flag in every American schoolhouse, so as to instill American patriotism and American values in the youth. To aid in their endeavor, the GAR enlisted the support of the Boston-based magazine The Youth's Companion. In 1892, the 400th anniversary of Columbus's discovery of America provided the perfect opportunity to further promotion of patriotism. Inspiration came in the form of Francis Bellamy, a former minister who had resigned his religious post due to his exceedingly radical socialist ideology. Hired by the Youth's Companion, Bellamy was intended to publicize the Columbus Day celebration. The first appearance of the pledge occurs in the authoring of the program, published on September 8th. The festivity was a success, as a follow-up article proudly declared,
"As the millions of pupils saluted the nation's emblem in the same words, I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." A lesson of thoughtful patriotism was taught, which will never be forgotten.
However, the pledge was not created out of patriotism alone. As America approached the turn of the century, more and more immigrants began arriving from southern European countries, inciting fear of anarchy, strange culture, strange religion, and an overall compromising of good American values. The Grand Army of the Republic and the Youth's Companion did their part in defending their country by trying to Americanize young immigrants with their new Pledge of Allegiance. It took a major event, World War I in 1914, to solidify American patriotic beliefs so much that a flag salute became fairly commonplace. Even then, there was no official national oath. In 1923, the National Flag Conference, sponsored by the American Legion, was instated in order to standardize a national flag pledge. The adjustments to Bellamy's pledge, made by the conference in 1923 and 1924, were the replacement of my flag with Flag of the United States of America, and the addition of a national flag salute, consisting of the right hand placed over the heart until the words "to the flag," whereupon the right arm was extended, palm up, towards the flag until the end of the pledge. This salute fell under increased scrutiny in the following years during the emergence of the Nazi Party in Germany, as extended arm salutes became associated with fascism. In order to compromise this controversy, the salute itself was changed in 1942 when Congress codified flag etiquette, officially recognizing Bellamy's pledge and omitting the extension of the arm. As the Young Pledge gained popularity in America, religious conflict began to emerge. Jehovah's Witnesses, a minority Christian sect which emphasizes a literal interpretation of the Bible, opposed the oath as idolatry. As young witnesses refused to participate in the pledge, becoming more and more common in the patriotic post-World War I America, they were expelled from school, subject to punishment and suspension, and exposed to the ridicule of their peers. These conflicts came to a head in 1935 when Lillian and William Gobitis, two Jehovah's Witness students, were expelled from their school in Minersville, Pennsylvania, for refusing to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. A legal suit brought by the student's father reached the Supreme Court in 1940. Ruling in favor of the school board, the High Court decision, issued by Justice Felix Frankfurter, emphasized the school's right to make its own rules, arguing that the Supreme Court was not the school board for the country. The lone dissenter of the court, Justice Harlan Stone, stated in the minority opinion that,
"History teaches us that there have been but few infringements of personal liberty by the state, which have not been directed, as they are now, at politically helpless minorities."
In the aftermath of the case, there was significant public outcry against the decision, yet many used it as justification to mistreat Jehovah's Witnesses. Witnesses were discriminated, beaten, run out of town, and threatened. Reacting to this horrendous conflict, Jehovah's Witness Walter Barnett, with the support of the public opinion, challenged a West Virginia law mandating the flag salute. Barnett's case was brought before the Supreme Court in 1943, where he was victorious. Authoring the majority opinion, Justice Robert Jackson rejected the Gobitis decision, saying,
"No official can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess, by word or act, their faith therein."
Following the end of World War II, America enjoyed a resurgence in patriotism and a renewed fear of communism and overall un-Americanism. As the Red Scare and Cold War progressed, God-fearing Americans began to associate communism with godlessness and acted to emphasize that disparity. This new emphasis of America as a nation under God affected the Pledge of Allegiance. In particular, the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic organization, pushed for an amendment to the pledge adding the words "under God." However, despite the multitude of resolutions brought before Congress attempting to amend the pledge, all failed. This would change on the morning of Sunday, February 4th, 1954. Preaching at the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C., Reverend George Dougherty fiercely advocated a change to the pledge.
To omit the words "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance is to omit the definitive character of the American way of life.
An important member of the congregation, none other than President Dwight D. Eisenhower, was moved by the sermon. Wholeheartedly agreeing with Dougherty's sentiments, Eisenhower signed a bill amending the pledge, adding "under God" in June of that year, finally achieving what so many people had long sought after. The 1960s ushered in an era of conflict and change in America. The youth, rejecting the ideals of their forebears, called the entire society of America into question. They began to protest the Pledge of Allegiance as a violation of their freedom of expression. They contended that the phrase "with liberty and justice for all" was untrue, citing the mistreatment of women, blacks, homosexuals, and minorities. War, unlike in previous eras, now failed to conjure patriotic passion. Opposition to Vietnam was rife, and many began to protest the war by refusing to recite the pledge. Conflict and controversy remained present through the rest of the 70s and 80s. The issue of the Pledge of Allegiance was brought into the public spectrum again during the election of 1988. The election saw Republican George H.W. Bush running against Democrat Michael Dukakis, former governor of Massachusetts. As governor, Dukakis had vetoed a bill mandating teacher-led recitation of the pledge, calling the bill unconstitutional. Bush harshly criticized Dukakis' actions, calling them unpatriotic. The pledge issue was indicative of Dukakis' other campaign blunders, which collectively led to his defeat. Politicians, reeling from the September 11th attacks, rushed to support their country, and as a result, many states, such as Colorado and Connecticut, instated mandatory pledge laws or strengthened existing laws. These, however, just as before, created conflict and controversy. These conflicts almost exclusively dealt with the pledge's "under God" phrase. Newly mainstream atheist beliefs questioned the validity of such a statement, citing the First Amendment, which establishes the separation of church and state. The words "under God," they argued, showed a bias towards monotheism, and as such, the Pledge of Allegiance was unconstitutional. In 2002, a case questioning the constitutionality of the Pledge of Allegiance, brought by self-proclaimed atheist Michael Newdow, reached the Supreme Court. However, the court avoided the issue at hand by ruling that Newdow did not have sufficient legal standing to bring the case. Newdow's case exemplified both sides of the "under God" issue. Opposition to the pledge was perfectly summed up in a quote by Judge Alfred Goodwin of the Ninth Circuit.
A profession that we are a nation under God is identical to a profession that we are a nation under Jesus, a nation under Vishnu, a nation under Zeus, or a nation under no God, because none of these professions can be neutral with respect to religion.
On the other hand, supporters of the pledge argued that the God reference was nothing more than an affirmation of patriotism. America had been founded on the concept of one God, and while the Establishment Clause prevented endorsement of any one religion, it did not extinguish all traces of public faith. The Supreme Court's defeat of Newdow does not signal the end of the pledge conflict. Along with Newdow's contention of the decision, other suits have also been filed against the Pledge of Allegiance. As long as America remains a culturally and religiously diverse nation, the pledge will always incite some form of conflict, and there will always be some attempt at compromise. As America progresses into the 21st century, times are drastically changing, and changes like these are reflected in the Pledge of Allegiance. From the original fears of immigrants to communists, terrorists, hippies, and atheists, the dynamic history of the pledge is diverse. Whether or not it is constitutional remains to be seen, yet every American has undoubtedly been touched by the conflicts and compromises of the Pledge of Allegiance.